After his owners abandon him in the woods, a puppy befriends a family of rabbits. That is the synopsis on Letterboxd for the 1995 film The Seventh Brother. Now, I grew up with this movie, and I'm pretty sure I owned it on DVD or something. But then one day I just didn't have it anymore. Not really sure where it went. But recently, and by recently I mean in the last few years, I stumbled upon The Seventh Brother on DVD at the thrift store. Boom. Fast forward to now, where I am here to share with you all this nostalgic and iconic masterpiece of a film. It's got peril, it's got action, it's got an absolutely banging soundtrack. Reviews on Letterboxd say, for the longest time I thought this movie was a figment of my imagination and I couldn't find it for the life of me. It's the earliest memory of a cartoon I have. 2.5 stars. Does anyone else remember this fever dream of a movie? Absolutely not, but I do. I remember. 3.5 stars. So the general consensus here, looking at the most popular reviews on Letterboxd for this movie, is that it's a fever dream of a movie that you weren't really sure existed until you find it like years later and you realize that it's a real thing and you didn't just dream this up. How many people have logged this movie? Bruh. Alright, so without any further ado, this is The Seventh Brother. The first shot is a view of a lovely morning sunrise or evening, and we are soon greeted by Dr. Albert E. Owl, the famous storyteller, who is pretty much just an owl with huge feet and a Scottish accent who breaks the fourth wall.
Good morning!
So after a short conversation with this owl, well, it's not really a conversation, he's just kind of talking to us, we find out that we are supposedly lost in the forest, and he goes on to tell us a story to help us get some courage whether we like it or not. And the story that he ends up telling us is, you guessed it, The Seventh Brother. So then we flash back to last spring where a girl and her grandfather are driving back home from the city. With them is the girl's puppy Tiny, the main character of this movie. Then we get this montage of them driving home while the intro credits play, and we get this absolute banger of a song.
There is a home that's waiting for each of us.
But then, as the song comes to an end, and as they're driving through a thunderstorm, their car suddenly breaks down. The grandfather is then just suddenly wearing a raincoat in the next scene, and he gets out to check the car. He then calls for his granddaughter to bring him the flashlight, and she leaves Tiny in the car with a blanket, but leaves the door open. You can probably tell what's going to happen next. Tiny then sees a frog through the open door, and the frog then strangely gurgles some rainwater? Why does he do that? Anyways, he hops along, and as you may have guessed it, Tiny runs after it. But little does Tiny know that there's maybe just a little bit of a drop off the side of the road. Just a little drop. Tiny then gets absolutely launched off the side of a cliff. Then the girl, Angie, and her grandfather get the car working and head off home thinking Tiny is sleeping under the blanket, when in fact he's fighting for his actual life trying to climb back to the road. And just as he makes it to the top, he watches the car drive away. But this is where it gets interesting. You see, looking upon the Wikipedia page for this movie to see if I could find any behind the scenes information or interesting facts about the movie, which I didn't really end up finding, except for this. Now, this movie is originally Hungarian, and what I found was that according to Wikipedia, the US version has the shortest runtime compared to the ones from Hungary and Germany. So how is the Hungarian version different, you may be asking? I mean, supposedly it's only 6 minutes longer. Well, in the original version, instead of him just accidentally being left behind, Tiny is thrown out of the car off the side of the road. I really didn't see that one coming. This isn't the only difference between the two versions, but we'll get to the other differences later. Also, I tried to find the German version of this movie and I could only find the Hungarian version, but when I looked it up, it didn't really seem like the German version was too different from the Hungarian version, except for the language being different as well as the songs. Anyways, Tiny then slides down the drop-off.
The drop-off?
Until he gets to the bottom and finds shelter from the rain. Meanwhile, Angie suddenly realizes that Tiny is missing and they drive back to go and look for him. But not long after, they decide to finally head home and look for Tiny once the storm has cleared up. Then Dr. Albert E. Owl takes a break from the main story to tell us a short story of how he decided to be brave when he was afraid. If you haven't caught on to the theme of this movie yet, then you really have not been paying attention. Then we go back to the main story where it's now morning, and before Tiny wakes up, we meet the other main characters, a group of 6 bunnies who are trying to figure out exactly what Tiny is. Tiny then wakes up and the bunnies realize that he's not a monster and they go up and talk to him. But they soon go off to the carrot patch, leaving Tiny behind because they're afraid of his owner coming back. But before the bunny siblings even make it to the carrot patch, they stop and vote on whether or not they should go back and help Tiny. And since the majority of them agree, I think that's considered a democracy? No, wait, that's That just shows how much I know about politics. Don't worry, I'm watching Star Wars The Clone Wars right now, so I'm trying to inform myself. Then they invite him to come with them to be a bunny puppy. Oh yeah, the bunnies haven't actually introduced themselves to Tiny yet. Well, don't worry, because they have their own musical number where they introduce themselves one by one. I will spare you and give you a brief description of the characters. JC, whose real name is Gerald Cuthbert, strongly dislikes to be called Gerald Cuthbert and is the tough guy of the group. Cody is a big back. In his part of the song, he literally sings,
As you can see, I'm not too thin. Eating is my life.
oh, and he also did this a few scenes ago. Mimi is bashful, Marty is fearful, Joanna is the compassionate one, I guess, older sister, and Rebecca is the problem solver. I don't really know. But here are some things that happen while on their way to the Carrot Patch. Tiny somehow almost accidentally eats a giant mushroom. I don't really know how this even happens. He like somersaults. He just ends up almost eating a mushroom. Like, how does that even happen? But he is warned that the mushroom is poisonous. Tiny jumps into a river and the bunnies think he drowns. Tiny runs out into an open field before looking around for danger, and the bunnies get absolutely triggered. And then we get a super short song about the vague danger that the bunnies fear, and while the song plays, we get this super cursed image to look at. And then Tiny finally seems to catch on to being a bunny puppy. Then at the Carrot Patch, they play a game of follow the leader, but then while JC is in the open field, a hawk swoops down and catches him. But Tiny comes to the rescue and barks at the hawk, chasing it away. And because Tiny basically saves JC's life without even consulting their parents, the bunnies decide to adopt him into their family, making Tiny their brother. Hence the name of the movie, The Seventh Brother. But then Marty makes this comment.
Remember, Dad was almost eaten by a dog. I wonder what he's going to do when he sees Tiny.
So, their dad was almost eaten by a dog, which was most likely probably a pretty traumatic event, and now they've just adopted a dog into their family, and they haven't even told their parents. I don't feel like this is gonna go well. Anyways, they come up with a plan to disguise Tiny in a bunch of leaves and head home. There, they tell their parents about the hawk attack and that someone helped save JC's life. After this, their parents are eager to meet whoever this person is. I guess they somehow didn't see the massive walking clump of leaves. Tiny then slowly shows himself and they realize that he is a dog. And after the bunnies beg their parents to keep him, believe it or not, their parents agree to Tiny becoming a member of their family. Then we return to Dr. Owl, and the scene just starts like this.
So you see.
Anyways, he basically just says that the next day, word had already begun to spread about the rabbit family's new addition.
What's wrong? Is there a fire?
The gossip pretty much spreads like wildfire, and many of the woodland creatures visit the rabbit's home to see if Tiny is really a danger, like the magpie was insisting. They soon realize that he's well behaved and leave. Then the bunnies and Tiny head out for the day, but as they're running or hopping through the forest, Tiny falls down over another edge. Why does this keep happening? Like, what's going on? But at the bottom, he discovers the scent of his owners and soon realizes that this is the place where the bunnies found Tiny. He even sees his owners calling for him from the other side of the lake. He barks at them and makes some pretty crazy facial expressions, but they somehow don't hear him. And they drive away before Tiny can catch up to them. And then Tiny comes to this conclusion.
They don't love me.
Then we segue to yet another song. This time we get this montage of sad scenes as Tiny remembers his owners. Most of it is just replaying the same scenes we've already seen earlier, including this part, which is played 5 times. Why do they play this part 5 different times? Anyways, the song is actually pretty good and works for the sad part of the movie. Did I actually almost get emotional by watching this part? Maybe. But anyways, in order to cheer Tiny up, the bunnies put on a play recreating the event of when Tiny rescued JC from the hawk. The play starts out with JC doing this. I don't know how he's doing that. It doesn't really seem possible with the laws of physics, but anyways, their reenactment plays out and by the end, Tiny is happy again and they just go back to eating. This part of the movie feels very time-fillery. Tiny and the bunnies are just kind of running through the forest. One of the only notable things that happens is that Tiny randomly becomes a matchmaker for a snail. But then just when the story seems to be going absolutely nowhere, they come across a poacher in the forest. And then they just run away. I don't think he even sees them. So I guess we're back to the story not feeling like it's going anywhere. There's actually more scenes with the poachers in the other versions, but they just don't have as much screen time here in this version. Anyways, Tiny runs off with the rest of the bunnies, but tells them to stop and that he's sick of running from pretty much everything. Then we get another song about the danger, which basically just flashes back to the hawk attack again using silhouettes, but it's actually kind of terrifying. Then a fox shows up and Tiny tells them to growl at the fox. The song continues as they beat up the fox, the song ends, and the fox runs away. Okay, so with this part of the movie, there seems to be several antagonists to Tiny and the rabbits. There's the poacher, who has only showed up for like one scene and who might not even know that the rabbits even exist. There's the danger, which I guess is just the general danger in the forest. The hawk, the fox, stuff like that. And then there's the magpie, who seems pretty set on spreading gossip about the rabbit family's newest member. But with there only being just about under 17 minutes left of this movie, how is it all gonna conclude? Just wait. Tiny then teaches the bunnies to do that thing that the bunnies do in Wallace and Gromit: Curse of the Were-Rabbit. Is this a lore connection? Is this a prequel to the 2005 film? Who knows? Anyways, the magpie actually ends up getting some of the birds to come and watch the bunnies as they're doing this, which is actually pretty surprising as it seemed like most of the forest was against listening to anything else she had to say. And then, as night begins to fall and the full moon appears in the sky, the poachers appear nearby. Probably because they heard the bunnies howling. That might have been a dead giveaway. Tiny and the bunnies then seek shelter in a hollowed out tree and howl, scaring off the poachers. And you might be thinking, that was super easy, barely an inconvenience. But that very same night, once Tiny and the bunnies had made it back home, lightning strikes a log which seemed to be damming up part of the river. The river floods and starts to flood the rabbit family's home. The dad starts to try to dig a way out and it was low-key giving me flashbacks to Watership Down. Then there's this super perilous sequence where Tiny saves Cody from drowning. The dad and JC are trying to dig their way out. Tiny saves Cody from falling down a waterfall and the rest of the bunnies have to jump and make it to dry land. Everything seems fine for the moment until we realize that the dad and JC are still trying to dig their way out while their home is flooding. Why didn't they just leave with everyone else? Anyways, Tiny ends up having to dig both of them out. Dr. Owl shows up again to inform us that winter is coming and it would be hard for Tiny to find food because rabbit food wasn't going to suffice. Oh, and also that Mrs. Magpie was still being annoying. So it turns out that maybe Tiny's becoming a bunny puppy wasn't necessarily the best thing for the circled life. A weasel attacks Mrs. Magpie, and when she asks him why he is attacking her, he says this:
Because the rabbits have become too dangerous.
But when Tiny sees what's happening and tries to help, he ends up getting bitten by the weasel. Tiny then uses his Super Smash Bros. Move and whacks the weasel back all the way into the water. Mrs. Magpie then gets the rabbits to come and help Tiny. The rabbit parents see that Tiny isn't doing well and knowing that winter is coming soon, go and see Dr. Owl, who tells them that Tiny needs to eat dog food instead of whatever the rabbits have been eating. They then respond like this for some reason.
We didn't know. Food? What's dog food?
Then Dr. Owl suggests that they take Tiny to his real home with the humans. After a suspenseful scene of them crossing a bridge, they eventually make it to Tiny's owner's house. They place Tiny in his doghouse and the bunnies howl to get the owner's attention. Okay, but whoever did the score kind of knew what he was doing, because it low-key may have made me emotional while watching it. So, do you remember when I said that in the original version, Tiny is purposefully abandoned by his owners, and in this version he is accidentally left behind and then is reunited with them here? But what if I told you that this scene right here is actually in the original version? Let me explain. So, in the original version, this is pretty much just a random nearby house that Dr. Owl knew that humans lived in, which begins to make sense in the US version where Dr. Owl sends the rabbits to a random house in the woods and it just happens to be the one with Tiny's owners in it. In the original version, these are just random humans who haven't really been seen before this part of the movie. The bunnies look through the window as Tiny is given some food by his owners. Tiny then stays being friends with the rabbits while also living with his owners, and the movie ends with some wise words from Dr. Owl.
Look inside your heart.
Look inside your heart, okay?
Don't be afraid to be who you really are.
Be yourself, got it.
You're never alone when you take the time to help someone else.
And help others. Alright. He tells us goodnight and then leaves us with these strange parting words.
Sleep tight. And when you awake, good things will come to you too.
That sounds like something written on the inside of a fortune cookie. So that's The Seventh Brother. Now, I do want to say that even though there are some goofy parts of this movie, it's really not all that bad. It's not what I would consider a bad animated movie or a it's so bad it's good movie. There are definitely worse animated movies that I've seen than this one.
No! No!
I think I got a rock in my butt. Oh.
The Seventh Brother is great. The music is great. Both the score and the songs are pretty good. The songs being very memorable. The characters are great and the story is interesting enough. I'd give it 3.5 stars out of 5. This movie is great and super nostalgic, but man, I just wish there was like, I don't know, like a sequel or something. That would be awesome. Oh my gosh, there's a sequel.